Please be seated. You may call your first witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Carla Hansen.
And you are still under oath. You may inquire.
Good morning, Ms. Hansen. We heard from you just a little bit earlier this morning, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so the jury knows, can you state your occupation again in 2012 with Chase Bank?
I was a branch assistant manager at the Kirkland branch.
And how long had you held that position?
At that branch, since we opened, I've been assistant manager for about 10 years.
As assistant manager, were you familiar with the procedures at Chase Bank for opening the bank?
Yes.
Were you also familiar with the opening and closing hours and so forth?
Yes.
What time did the Kirkland Chase Bank branch open in the morning on weekdays in 2012?
Posted hours were 9 o'clock. We always open 10 minutes early. So we opened the doors at 10 to 9.
Was that for customers to actually come into the
Yes.
bank? And when you opened the doors at 10 to 9, would the other employees have had to be there in order to serve the customers?
Yes. what
time were the employees supposed to arrive on a weekday?
I think we got there at 8:15. It might have been 8:30. I don't recall.
But did they have to get there earlier, obviously, in order to get prepared for the day?
No, that was when the employees actually went in the branch.
Okay. Was there any type of morning meeting that occurred at the bank prior to opening for customers?
At about 8:45 every morning, we had what we called our morning huddle.
What happened at the morning huddle?
Kind of like a cheer session, you know, what are we doing today? What did we do good yesterday? What can we do better today?
In 2012, who was the manager of the Kirkland Chase Bank branch? In March of 2012.
Dave.
And who would have led the morning huddle at 8:45?
Either Dave or myself.
On March 21st, 2012, which was the day that David Pietz was arrested, who was scheduled to lead the morning huddle?
Dave.
And why Dave as opposed to you?
Because I was supposed to be in a meeting?
Off-site?
Yes, in Bellevue.
Can you please describe the opening procedures that would occur in the morning whereby employees would open up the bank?
We utilized a two-person opening, which meant that two people would have to get there at the same time without making contact, just see that one or the other was there. One person would stand across the street. The other person would go into the bank, disarm the alarm, go in and do a sweep of the bank, and then set an all-clear signal, and then the second and any subsequent people could come in.
In terms of the employee who actually went into the bank while the other employee was watching from another location, who would that typically be?
Generally, it was myself or Dave. If one of us were not available, we had two bankers that also had the combination.
So on March 21st, 2012, when you were supposed to be away at this meeting, who was the employee that was supposed to actually do the physical opening of the bank?
On that day, it was supposed to be Dave.
Why does Chase employ this two-person opening procedure?
Security.
Can you explain a little bit more specifically why one person watches from another distance?
For if there's going to be a takeover robbery, if someone's going to jump out of the bush and shove you in the door, then the second person would see that happening and they would be able to call 911.
And is there certain information that the manager or whoever's actually doing the physical opening of the bank has in order to get the bank open that the other tellers and employees don't have?
The managers and the two bankers both had the code to shut down the alarm.
And that would enable the person opening the bank to actually get in and get everything
We
open?
would actually physically enter the branch, and then there was an alarm pad that we would punch the code into, which would disarm it.
So if there was a teller watching from a distance away, would that teller have had the actual code to get the bank open for the day?
They'd have to wait for me, in this case, or one of the bankers to show up.
Under the opening procedure, once the manager or whoever opened the bank got it open, was there some type of all-clear signal that would be used to indicate to the teller watching that it was safe to open that it was safe to come on in and
There
help?
was. It rotates, it changes monthly, and it's something big enough so that the person across the street can see it.
If there was a teller watching from across the street and the person opening the bank, responsible for opening the bank, didn't show up, what would be the concern?
Either the person overslept, or, I mean, you could go so far as to say they might have gotten in a car accident, or for whatever reason we're not there.
How about in terms of security, though? Would there
Then
be
they
some-
would, you might want to call the person that you knew you were supposed to be opening with and see where are you, or call somebody else that you know has the code and say, hey, they're not here, can you come and let me in, that type of thing.
But if there was a teller watching from across the street and the manager didn't show up, would there be a way to get the bank open?
Not until a second person showed up.
And on March 21st, 2012, were you actually contacted by the teller who was supposed to assist David Pietz in opening up the bank branch that morning?
While I was driving to my meeting in Bellevue, my cell phone kept ringing, but I just did not answer it. And then when I did get to Bellevue, I finally called him back to see what was going on. By that point, he had already gotten into the bank because one of my bankers had showed up that had the code to let him in.
But had there been some difficulty that morning getting the bank open because David had been
I
arrested?
believe it opened late because my banker wasn't scheduled in until 9.
I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Ross?
So, Ms. Hanson, whoever was scheduled to open the bank, whether it was you or others, you arrived between like 8:15 to 8:30, is that right? Did you answer out loud? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
But the bank itself, you wouldn't open the doors until 10 to 9.
Correct.
Now, it was not unusual for Dave, the defendant, even though he was one of the people who opened the bank, to not show up on time. Is that right?
Correct.
In fact, he was in a habit of not showing up on time even when he was supposed to open the bank.
Here and there, now and then, yeah.
So if the defendant didn't show up on time, there wasn't any extra concern that people usually had about that. Is that right?
Not generally.
And on mornings when he wouldn't show up on time, I take it he also wouldn't leave the morning huddle?
Correct.
If the defendant was at the bank to open it at 8:15 on March 21st, and the other employee wasn't there, he presumably would have had time to have a conversation before going in and opening the bank. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
No further questions.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down. Call your next witness.
Yes, we would call Detective Pavlovic back to the stand.
And we know you're still under oath.
Yes, sir.
Detective, referring you back to February 8, 2006, you weren't at the Pietz condominium that day, were you?
Not on February 8th, 2006, no.
You are aware, though, that other detectives from the King County Sheriff's Office were at the Pietz condominium that evening around 8 p.m.,
Yes, I was.
and they conducted a search of the condominium.
Yes, they did.
And did they also take photographs during that search?
Yes, they did.
I'm going to hand you what's previously marked or identified as Defendant's Exhibit 60, A, B, and C.
Thank you.
And can you tell us whether those appear to be photographs that were taken by King County detectives on February 2006 during the search of the Pietz condominium?
Yes, I've seen these photographs before, and I believe they were taken that day.
Thank you. Your Honor, we'd offer Exhibit 60. A, B, and C.
Minute.
And do those photographs from different angles show a Drano container next to a bathtub?
They do. This container is against the wall in between the toilet and the bathtub.
Thank you. Your Honor, could I publish these to the jury?
Okay.
Thank you. And I will just publish B at this point. Thank you. No further questions.
Any questions, counsel?
No.
You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, those are the witnesses we have this morning. Our next witness will be here for 1:30.
All right, counsel, looks like you have a little extra time for lunch. I'm sorry, counsel. Members of the jury. And counsel, too. All right, so if the jury will return to the jury room, you'll be released for lunch. 1:30. 1:15. Anything else before lunch, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
All right, officers? We'll be in recess.